Overfishing by Michael Alvarado. Introduction to the Tragedy of the Commons. Definition of the commons. The commons refers to shared resources that are available to everyone, like air, water, land, and fish in the ocean. These resources are collectively owned or used by a group, but no single person or entity is responsible for them. Definition of tragedy. The tragedy refers to the overuse and depletion of these resources because individuals acting in their own self-interest tend to exploit the resource without considering the long-term effects or the well-being of others. Essentially, when everyone acts this way, the resource becomes degraded or exhausted, which harms everyone in the long run. For example, the concept was first articulated by ecologist Garrett Hardin in 1968, who used the example of a shared pasture where individuals each seeking to maximize their own benefits graze more livestock than the pasture can support, eventually leading to its degradation. Overfishing and the tragedy of the commons. Overfishing is an act of catching fish at a higher rate than they can reproduce. Many of the world's fisheries are common resources, meaning they are accessible to all fishing vessels. Regardless of nation or region, why it's a tragedy of the commons. Self-interest. Fishing companies and individuals act in their own self-interest, trying to catch as many fish as possible to maximize their profits. However, if everyone acts this way, the fish population is depleted. No incentive for sustainability. Because fish are a part of a shared resource, no single company or fisherman feels directly responsible for ensuring the long-term sustainability of the fishery. This lack of regulation or collective responsibility leads to overexploitation. Depletion of resources. The result is a decrease in fish populations, which in turn harms the entire ecosystem, impacts local economies, and threatens food security for communities reliant on fish as primary source of protein. Real-world example: overfishing the global oceans. Global issue. Fishing is widespread in the world's oceans, which estimates suggesting that around 30% of global fish stocks are overexploited, while another 60% are fully exploited. Examples of depletion. The cod fisheries off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada collapsed in the early 1990s due to overfishing. Despite warnings, fishing continued at unsustainable rates, leading to the virtual extinction of cod in the region, devastating local economies. The Atlantic bluefin tuna has been overfished to the point where its populations are critically low, largely due to its high demand in sushi markets. The impact of the tragedy of the commons on overfishing. Fishing disrupts marine ecosystems as the removal of key species affects food webs and biodiversity. Economic consequences. Fishermen and fishing industries lose their livelihoods when fish populations decline or collapse. Additionally, nations that depend on fisheries for exports or local consumption face economic instability. Food security. Many communities around the world rely on fish as a primary source of protein. Overfishing threatens their food security and their natural health of millions. Solutions to the tragedy of commons and overfishing. Regulation and quotas. Governments and international bodies like the United Nations and the International Whaling Commission are working on implementing fishing quotas, setting catch limits, and enforcing seasonal bans to give fish populations time to recover. Sustainable fishing practices. Encouraging sustainable fishing methods such as using eco-friendly gear and fishing at sustainable rates can help reduce the pressure on overexploited species. Community-based management. Some areas have adopted local community-based management of fisheries, where communities take responsibility for their own resources using traditional knowledge to ensure sustainability. Marine protected areas. Designating areas where fishing is restricted and can allow all ecosystems to recover, and these zones can act as breeding grounds for species that can later repopulate the broader ocean.